that is ongoing this week was the Albuquerque Isotopes hat. That's what I'll be wearing on today's show, defeating the Madden Midwest Illinois Truck Plaza hat, which I'm very sad about. It got trumped. People did not like. People not only voted for the Albuquerque hat, they voted against the Madden hat. So
wait, is the Truck Plaza a truck stop?
Yes,
it is no longer in existence, but in 1995, yes, it was. It was a truck stop.
A hot meal, a clean bed, and okay showers.
Yeah, the Iowa 80 truck stop in Walcott is still there. God,
this had been a Skelly's back in the day, and then it lost its Skelly's affiliation and became the Midwest Illinois Truck Plaza. And now I think it's been torn down and turned into a restaurant. It's no longer there.
The only thing we had was the Flying J's.
There are other big old truck-friendly gas stations. Lou Bob's, for instance, is still there.
The Dixie Travel Plaza is still there, but it is now the Dixie Travel Plaza, not the Dixie Truck Stop.
There's a Dixie in Greenville too. Yeah, it drove Midwest Illinois out of business, or at least I think that's right. Am I remembering that right? Could be wrong.
Man,
it's just there.
Look at how inexpensive biodiesel is in the Midwest. Holy cow!
Did all the corn or crop?
I don't think they produce much of it locally in the Midwest.
It's not a Dixie. It might be a Love's.
There are a lot of Loves.
Maybe it's off the barbecue dripping.
Got a whole lot of Loves.
You know, my son sent going back to Captain Marvel for just one moment.
Well, we hadn't been talking.
No spoilers.
Marvel at all.
I know, but this is before we even started going live.
But with 1 minute before the show, let me bring up one of the most divisive films of all time. Yes, Len, go ahead.
No. The music cues, like the No Doubt music cue was sort of like Thor Ragnarok's Immigrant Song, but I don't know if it necessarily
belongs
or earned it.
So I know the scene that refers to. I haven't seen the movie yet. I'm probably going to see it this weekend. But I just want to say the funniest like Thor Ragnarok reference I heard was a friend of mine who lives in St. Louis. And he hadn't seen the Guardians of the Galaxy movies or Thor Ragnarok, so he watched them with my boys while he was out here for a few days. And he was the scene with the Immigrant Song comes on. He's like, that's why I saw 6-year-olds singing this all summer long. It's like I couldn't figure out why all of a sudden all these kids were howling Zepp. And I'm like,
they're enjoying the classics. The song holds up well.
Yes, it does. Very well.
A lot better than a lot of the rest of their catalog.
Sorry.
But yeah, I unfortunately read that song and where it comes, and I was just like, boy, that's either going to work really well or really not well.
You're talking about Captain Marvel now? Yeah. There's a couple weird music cues in it.
Time for some Daily Tech News show.
Here we go.
Mind. Sarah, would you read us in today?
I would.
You would. Okay, good.
Yes.
Let's do. Here we go. 3, 2.
Paul McLaughlin has supported independent news directly for 5 years. Be like Paul. Become a DTNS member at patreon.com/DTNS.
This is the Daily Tech News for Friday, March 15th, 2019 in Los Angeles. I'm Tom Merritt.
And from Studio Feline, I'm Sarah Lane.
Am I a Skrull or am I Len Peralta? Spoiler, I'm Len Peralta.
And I'm the show's producer, Roger Chang.
Joining us this week, or this day, actually, Patrick Norton, host of Tech Thing and AVXL, is back. How's it going, Patrick?
I'm thinking some people think a day with me is like a week, so you're probably accurate on both counts.
No worries. Patrick's back to talk to us a little bit about that new Nvidia card that just got announced yesterday. We've got that coming up. We are also going to touch on the events in New Zealand, not so much on the events themselves, but on the response by tech companies regarding the video there. So just a warning to folks that we will be getting into a little bit more serious topic later in the show. But let's start with a few tech things you should know.
Spotify filed a complaint with the EU that Apple's App Store is anti-competitive. Now, Apple posted a public response Thursday emphasizing how much Spotify has benefited from that same App Store. Apple also detailed how many apps in the store don't generate revenue for Apple itself. The post didn't mention the EU complaint or directly address the points that were raised by Spotify, though.
Google's Gboard keyboard for iOS now supports Google Translate. That's a feature that's been on Gboard for Android since about, 2017. All 103 languages are supported by Google Translate in the new Gboard for iOS.
Samsung's Notebook 9 Pro and Notebook 9 Pen, announced at CES, will be available starting March 17th. St. Patrick's Day presents for everybody. The 13-inch Notebook 9 Pro is available for $1,999 with 8 gigs of RAM and 256 gigs of storage, or $1,299 for 16 gigs of RAM and 512 gigs of storage. The Notebook 9 Pen ranges from $1,399 to $1,799 with either a 13 or 15-inch model and up to 1 terabyte of storage, plus the updated S Pen.
Verbal typo there. You said Notebook 9 Pro was $19.99. It's $10.99.
$10.99.
It is not, in fact, more expensive than the higher capacity RAM one. Just wanted to clarify.
Thank you.
A jury in the federal court of San Diego found that Apple owes Qualcomm $31 million for infringing 3 patents related to managing battery life. I imagine they'll appeal. It's not even the only one of these kinds of cases between these two companies, but just so you know, there's the latest.
Alex Heath over at Cheddar reports that Snap plans to announce a mobile gaming platform to developers on April 4th, dubbed Project Cognac. The platform features games, or will anyway, from outside developers designed to work within the Snapchat app. As part of their gaming push, the company acquired both the Australian studio Pretty Great for $8.6 million and the British-based browser game engine startup Play Canvas in 2018.
All right. Let's talk a little bit more about what Facebook's doing with AI.
Yeah, Facebook is launching an AI tool that it says can detect and flag, quote, near nude images or videos that are shared without permission on Facebook and Instagram. The images would then be viewed by moderators, human ones. Currently, non-consensual intimate images have to be reported by somebody before that they can get removed. So if they're not reported, they tend to kind of hang out for a while. Facebook also said it would continue to improve those tools and response speed and launched a page at facebook.com/safety/ not without my consent for information about dealing with this kind of content.
Yeah, so this is often called revenge porn. If you remember, Facebook has a tool in some countries, including the US, where you can choose to upload pictures of yourself that Facebook promises they won't share with anyone else, but in order to make sure that the algorithm can catch them if anyone else tries to upload them. Basically, it's like content ID for your own pictures. They're expanding that to a bunch of other countries, but that requires you to do something that you may not be comfortable with. So this AI is a chance for them to say, we would like to try to detect stuff by looking at what the image looks like, the context, who's posting it, what the caption says. And we've done some machine learning training to try to figure out when that is ill-intentioned.
And also, a near nude image. Okay, I understand what Facebook's going for here, right? And you almost rather get a false positive than miss things. But okay, what if I'm in a bathing suit, and it gets flagged, and a moderator, for whatever reason, think, maybe Sarah should know about this. Like, do I get an email? I mean, what are the next steps after that to make sure that I understand what's going on?
They talk about it in the post. It'll notify a moderator. The moderator will review it and say, like, yeah, okay, this doesn't seem like a false positive. Let's notify this person and say, I don't think this is supposed to be up. We're going to pull it down unless you say otherwise. So I don't have any problem on that end of it. And if there are too many false positives, well, A, they need to have better machine learning training, but B, that's why they're having these not automatically pulled down, but sent to human moderators as a way to help the human moderators keep track of what's happening out there.
And upset the moderators, as we all know. Moderators.
No, that's not a job I would want. You're right.
No.
The Tokyo 2020 Olympics and Paralympics launched their robot project Friday, showing 2 robots designed to assist supporters, workers, and athletes during the games. 16 of Toyota's human support robots, or HSRs, a small white robot with facial features, will assist wheelchair users and can carry things and guide viewers to seats. 20 of Panasonic's Power Assist suits, a battery-powered exoskeleton, will help workers lift and carry objects like luggage without straining the back. It can also be used by athletes while they're in the village, not while they're competing, obviously. The Tokyo Olympics begin on July 24th, 2020. Patrick, obviously very Japanese for the Tokyo Olympics to have a bunch of robots, but these seem kind of cool.
I'm part of me is like waiting for the first video of a couple. It won't happen in Japan. It won't happen this early, but I'm waiting for the first time the exoskeleton fighting starts, or people start flinging things at each other with the exoskeleton.
It would not be the first exoskeleton fight that originated from Japan, would it?
No, I mean, plus anytime you can, make an Aliens reference with Sigourney Weaver, although I think I named the wrong movie. It just, I'm fascinated. I hope they work well. I know a lot of the earlier airport robots have been works in progress.
Yeah, I wonder about the HSRs. They kind of remind me of that airport robot sort of thing with the facial features and everything. But if they're just kind of carrying things or kind of helping you move around in flat surfaces, sure, it's kind of nifty. And I think we're going to see more robots coming out of Tokyo. It's the exoskeleton. This is the one that captures my imagination too.
Yeah.
Sarah, do any of these robots really excite you? Yeah.
We talk about robots so much now. I'm just like, sure, they're part of the Olympics. Seems like the right place. Yeah, exactly. Tokyo. It all makes sense. It all fits. Okay, let's talk about passing notes in class, shall we? Or at least the modern way to do it. The Atlantic's Taylor Lorenz has an article discussing how school students are using Google Docs as a way to chat with other students during class. Google Docs is often used to do collaborative exercises. So students have gotten pretty savvy. They could use the built-in chat. There is one, but there are other clever workarounds. For example, highlighting a word allows for comments in a pop-up box that can be quickly hidden by pressing the resolve button. Sort of like ephemeral messaging for Google Docs, I guess. Or sometimes you could create a doc and then each kid could pick a different font so everybody knows who's who, and then chat line by line in the body of the text. And kids who don't use Google Docs do similar things in the online version of Word or even school-run collaboration spaces.
Yeah, so if you haven't used this in Google Docs, just right-click anywhere and choose comment, and the little box pops up, and resolve gets rid of everything. Now, it does destroy the record of your conversation, but if you're just chatting about, like, hey, we're going to meet up after school, you want to get some food or whatever.
Right. Yeah, I mean, you're whispering to your classmate. I mean, that just sort of goes away too. It's smart. I didn't have the internet when I was in elementary school or high school for that matter. So this was just not, having the internet and trying to keep kids off of their computers or their mobile phones or whatever was just not something that, I don't have any experience firsthand with this, but kids want to chat with each other, right? You're not supposed to be whispering to each other. You're not supposed to be passing notes. You're not supposed to be chatting about non-school things within Google Docs, but I think that's pretty smart of them, especially if, maybe you don't have access to the internet, but everybody's on their computer and you're supposed to be doing some spreadsheet collaboration.
Well, I think you'd have to have access to the internet for that to work, though, wouldn't you?
Well, you could be
for Google Docs, I think
on a local Wi-Fi.
You'd be on the high school internet, which would block out a lot of stuff for sure. So you wouldn't. Your WhatsApp might be blocked. Yeah.
Right. Well,
Patrick, you're a father. Do you think that this will still be around by the time your kids are passing notes in class, or will they be doing it by augmented reality?
Yeah. I mean, one of my favorite lines of all time is William Gibson: "The street finds its own uses for things." I'm also laughing as anytime I see an article, it's like, shock, children using tools to do things that the original inventors did not intend. I just think about there's a Dilbert cartoon 1,000 years ago where Dilbert's got to basically do a content filter, and somebody's like, okay, so it's you against every horny 14-year-old child in the universe. Good luck. It's just, there'll be some horrifying variation on this. I'm just wondering what happens at the point where we become kind of cyborg and we have, our cell phones are embedded into our necks. Like, what do you end up doing to block this kind of stuff? Because it's amazing to hear stories from teachers about some of the stuff, like the incredibly creative ways kids are hiding their phones to continue having conversations when they're not supposed to be in classrooms. I mean, this is an ancient tradition.
Is it something where, okay, we look at this story and we're like, oh, they told kids to put their phones away. They're looking to make sure they're not passing notes. So the kids figured out a way to chat over Google Docs in a way that the teachers can't immediately see. They're supposed to be using this tool for collaboration. It's part of their lesson. And even when they're home, they're working on their homework. The parents may think, oh, they're working on that Google Doc with their friends, but they're really chatting. Is that a problem? And the other side of it is it, or should we continue to try to crack down, because even knowing they'll always find a way around, at least it slows them down a tiny bit?
Yes, the latter one. As a parent, hold the line. Sorry.
I mean, I think that's the key, right? Is not we expect these policies to eliminate all distraction and kids will only work on. No, I mean, it's almost healthy for them to figure this out, but also you don't want to make it so easy that they end up not being able to work on their stuff at all.
Yeah, it's a thin line, because it always amazes me. I get a lot of questions like, what do you do to filter the internet from your children? I'm like, I don't. I make them use the internet, with the door open and in public area, or public or open the family areas of the house, not necessarily their bedroom. And at some point, that's going to become more challenging as they get as they get older. But I just, kids, they want to learn things. They're going to figure out a way to learn them. And that's certainly how any of a number of people in my generation started hacking the internet, because they wanted access to things that they didn't have at home. Again, honorable tradition, maybe not legal, but certainly where some of the most talented technologists I know got their starts.
Circle of life. Some of our presidential candidates were part of Cult of the Dead Cow, apparently. All right. Nvidia announced the GTX 1660 GPU Thursday, starting at $219 or 199 pounds UK, coming from EVGA, Asus, and a few others. It does not support DLSS or ray tracing. This is not an RT. This is a GTX. But Nvidia says it has a 15% boost over the GTX 1060 and is 130% faster than the 960. Patrick, what else should we know about this?
The really interesting takeaway from this card is that the processor is incredibly friendly to overclocking and really, really easy to overclock. There's a great article by Sebastian Peak over at PC Per. And by the time he was done overclocking it, he was looking at better than 16, like roughly the equivalent of a 1660 Ti, which is a card that costs like $60 more, $40 to $60 more. It does solid, not great numbers at 2560 by 1440. It does very, very well at 1080p. So, which is the vast majority of Steam gaming, like nearly all of it is done on 1080p monitors. And then a much lower resolution is the second most popular monitor. Like I want to say 80% is 1080p monitors. 90%, something crazy like that. So for the vast majority of gamers, this is the new 1060. It's faster than a 1060. Not huge amounts until you overclock it, but this is a really nice card and really friendly for overclocking that I think if you've been waiting and waiting and waiting, it's probably time to go ahead and buy a GPU at this point.
Yeah, $219. That seems like a fairly reasonable price, especially if you've been waiting for a while. If you were someone who just bought, say, a 1060 or something like that, must you weep? Did you pull the trigger too soon?
You probably pulled the trigger too soon, but we've also like on This Week in Computer Hardware, we've been talking about, hey, it's pretty much when the 1660 Ti came out, that was pretty much the death knell. At that point, that card and the 1060 were selling for about the same price. So it's like, just stop buying 1060s, stop buying 1070s. It's time to look to the new generation. It's also been really interesting to watch Nvidia take, kind of split, like, okay, this is our lineup that's going to have the horsepower to do ray tracing, and this is our lineup that's not going to have the horsepower to do ray tracing. I think it's smart, especially at the low end. Also because there's just so few games that actually take advantage of RTX at this point. I don't think you're missing out on much of anything.
I think one of the decisions people are trying to make when they buy these cards is, how long will it be until I need to buy another card? And the ray tracing part of this really makes that murkier, doesn't it?
It does. It's actually kind of frustrating. So one of the things that happens, a piece of hardware comes out, and ray tracing was a particularly brutal example of this, right? We saw the first RTX cards came out, right around Black Friday, right around the tail end of November, beginning of December. And when you looked at the regular 3D performance versus ray tracing performance, the ray tracing performance was atrocious. And then a few weeks later, there was a massive update to the firmware or for the drivers for the first RTX cards, and then it was I want to say like a 50% increase in performance, which is huge. But as more RTX games are written, as more games are written with RTX kind of from the foundation, performance will go up as the number of games goes up. I mean, literally, there's like 3 or 4 things you can play using RTX right now. A year from now, I'd probably say, yeah, buy an RTX card of some point, of some type. But also at that point, we'll also see a whole bunch, probably the beginnings of the next generation cards, or maybe some updates at the low end. It's also interesting because AMD is releasing their Navi cards, the next generation Navi cards, possibly as early as August of this year, is the latest rumor mongering around that. So,
if I'm a bargain monger, I was going to say bargain hunter, but I just like the idea of a bargain monger, somebody who's like an ironmonger who just crafts bargains. Is it ridiculous to expect the 1060 to go down in price? And is that a bad buy?
It's messy right now. The kind of back channel story is that hardware manufacturers kept building a ton of 1060, 1070s, and to a lesser degree 1080s, right? Because they build more of the cheap cards, less of the more expensive cards, because they were just hammering out cards. Because for the better part of a year, a little over a year, they could sell every card they could make. And then as the Ethereum / Bitcoin / cryptocurrency mayhem sort of slowed down and then screeched to a grinding halt, what happened was that people stopped buying cards. And at some point, Nvidia was like, didn't we? Oh, cryptocurrency may have actually helped our sales in the last year. I know we said it didn't, but we won't say we were lying, but we were lying. And the flip side of that is a friend of mine who was running a pretty serious crypto mining operation in his garage, because in his part of the US, electricity is incredibly cheap. By the time he pulled the 17 systems down, he had somewhere in the neighborhood of 60 GPUs to sell. So right now, the great bargains in GPUs, if you trust a GPU that's been running flat out for 6 months or a year or more, which a lot of people do, some people don't. The 2 biggest experts I know on that are completely divided. One says it's insane to do that. The other one says they're fine. The bargains right now are probably, locally word of mouth or Craigslist, where people are selling off the cards that they put into into crypto mining systems. And those should grossly undercut the price, the retail price of the cards. The vendors all seem to have been doing a really good job of kind of like, yeah, we're keeping a trickle out. I haven't checked the prices in the last 24 hours. I wouldn't entirely be shocked if all of a sudden 1060 cards got really, really cheap, because there seemed to be a glut of 3 GB 1060 cards. Don't buy those, period, unless you just need a GPU for no money. And there were, no 1080s, very, very few 1070s, and a lot of 6 GB 1060s. So I don't know where any of the rest of them might be going, but I would really think twice. If don't spend more than $200, $180, $150 on a 1060 right now, because the performance advantage when you overclock the 1660 is pretty huge.
All right. Thank you for that, Patrick. Folks, if you want to get all the tech headlines each day in about 5 minutes, subscribe to dailytechheadlines.com. All right. At least 49 people were killed in a shooting at 2 mosques in Christchurch, New Zealand Friday, and video is being circulated still, purporting to be a 17-minute Facebook live stream from one of the shooters. Facebook said it was alerted by police shortly after the stream started, and it removed the video as well as the shooter's Facebook and Instagram accounts. Now, if you believe that the 17-minute video is that very same video, which very well may be, we can't say, we haven't confirmed that, that would mean it took Facebook about 17 minutes to pull it down. Video claiming to be copies have appeared elsewhere on Facebook, as well as on YouTube, Reddit, and Twitter. All the platforms claim to be removing the videos as soon as they become aware of them. And New Zealand police have asked people not to share the video. It doesn't really matter whether this is in fact the video or not. This is video that these platforms don't want out there for multiple reasons. And it seems to be I don't want to make this to make too little of this, but it seems to be the same kind of situation you have in less serious arenas, like copyright infringement and we were talking about revenge porn earlier, where things get posted first, then you find them and take them down. A lot of folks out there are saying these companies need to do better. They need to be able to stop these live streams from even happening at the beginning. But to do that requires something along the lines of prior restraint. Which, again, these companies are allowed to do that. They're not governmental agencies, so they're not bound by First Amendment or laws similar to that in other parts of the world. But that's hard. It is hard to allow people to share things and keep track of everything they're sharing and figure out what it is fast enough to know when it's like this. Everyone would agree this shouldn't be there. And I think this is a case where everyone agrees this shouldn't be there. So that's the difficult situation that we are in as internet users and that tech companies are in as companies. And it's easy, I think, to throw stones and say they should do better. Sure, they should do better. But how do you do that? And where do you draw the line? Patrick, Sarah, I know this is not an easy conversation to have, but Sarah, I know in our pre-show you had some pretty strong opinions about this.
Well, okay, yeah, and I mean the story is it's hard to talk about for a lot of reasons, but if you stick to the tech part of it, I understand that it's certainly in machine learning and AI, we can get to a point, hopefully, where if there's a video in question that is not going to be allowed on the platform, we can get to a point where subsequent videos that have enough of the same data, they could be called something different, or they could be maybe manipulated a little bit or chopped up, can at least be flagged as, no, it's that video again, and we're not doing that. Okay, we're not there yet, but I can see where tech companies, particularly dealing with video and live stream and all of that stuff, YouTube, Facebook, and the rest, could get to a point where we can manage stuff like this a lot more easily. But the first video in question, I don't know how, I don't care how powerful you are as a tech company. If I, with no criminal record, decide to do something horrific out of nowhere and I live stream it, there is no company, there is no person even who's going to know that ahead of time necessarily. Maybe there's a history of stuff going on, but if there isn't, I don't know how you can blame Facebook for this.
It's the scale of being able to auto detect live streams and try to train machine learning. That certainly feels possible, but it's not as easy as it might sound. There's the whole battle of content ID, where it seems like you should be able to say, hey, once you know this video shouldn't be there, put its signature in the database and block it from being posted by anyone. Except we know content ID isn't perfect either direction. It has false positives where it pulls down things it shouldn't, and it doesn't always find the things it should because they're slightly manipulated. So that's not a perfect system either. Patrick, what do you think of all this?
I'm having a lot of complicated thoughts that on one hand are simply like, why are people so broken? And it's you spend enough time in the right corners of the internet, what has been seen cannot be unseen. And a friend of mine was like, oh, my son's looking at X. I'm like, yeah, you need to have talk to your son, because I'm sure there's like anime collections on 4chan, but generally speaking, people aren't going to 4chan for chipper stuff. And this also bumps against the whole concept of free speech and everything else. But you think about the War of the Worlds, for example, right? Sunday, October 30th, 1938. And it was a CBS radio, right? Mercury Theater on the air, and people freaked out because despite the fact that they had identified it as being not a real thing in a radio drama, people thought it was real. And ever since then, there's always been certain genres of media, like the Blair Witch House project, the Blair Witch House, lots of other stuff where they're trying to create this authentic media, right? And so the nightmare situation is for a big media company to create some sort of viral thing that's taking advantage of live streaming and for Facebook or YouTube or whoever to slam it down. Now, I think they would be operating hand in glove and communicating, to make this authentic experience happen in an incredibly fake manner. But I am almost sympathetic or I'm sympathetic to the issue that anybody at any time can do something incredibly horrifying with a perfectly, healthy, normal, whatever you want to call it, tool, right? The flip side is that, and I certainly was torqued up on my soapbox and howling like a meth addict in pre-show, where I was basically like, well, of course they have difficulty slowing these things down. They've had difficulty. There was this period where I knew a whole bunch of people who were fairly serious YouTubers were like, woo, Facebook, YouTube alternative, it's going to be huge. It's going to be, and then they realized that there were just so many egregious issues with they didn't have the tools to protect intellectual property. They didn't have a particularly great reporting system. They didn't really care. And I think sort of the laissez-faire attitude there, comes around and about intellectual property comes around and bites them firmly on the ass when there's an actual like ZOMG, just what we need this week is to be tied in as we're the place to go to find people posting video of this horrendous incident. But that also gets back to, it's kind of like shutting off the supply of drugs by stopping the people selling them. You see, the drug prices are created by the demand, and as long as you have addicts seeking product, people are going to be like, I can make money and deliver the product. So, people broken, see line one.
Right. And we're certainly not going to solve that ever on this show. We're not going to solve the technology issue. We're not going to pretend to on this show. But hopefully we got you thinking. And you know what? I think the responsible thing to do is to keep this conversation going. So send us your thoughts, feedback at dailytechnewsshow.com. I don't want to come off as minimizing the human aspect of this either. It's our job to talk about the technology and the technology policy of it. And we stick to our mission on the show. But Len Peralta, always illustrates our Friday show. And I think, Len, you do a good job of bringing in the human element of this story today.
Oh, it's super difficult to talk about. Lots of people heartbroken in a lot of different ways. So I wanted to do an image that was poignant and try to touch on that a little bit, the human element. This piece is called Tears Streaming Live. And for those of you who aren't watching the video, it shows a man and a woman behind a computer, just broken down, sad. A lot of us feel this way. It's a real tragedy. So I don't want to be super crass about saying, oh, you can buy this print. So what I'm doing, if you go to patreon.com/Len, you can download this for free right now. If you go to my Patreon, it'll be free through the weekend. And then, who knows what I'm going to do with it after that. But I think it's just we're just scratching the surface here about being able to talk about stuff like this, and it needs to be talked about.
Yeah. Really good, Len. I can't even look at it right now without tearing up, to be honest. So
it's tough.
Thanks for doing that.
You're welcome.
Let's all take a breath now and say, New Zealand, we're with you. And thank you, Patrick Norton.
Thanks for having me. I feel very quiet right now.
Yeah. I will wrap up our show from here. You can keep up with Patrick at techthing.com, at avxl.com, and you can support this show lots of ways at dailytechnewsshow.com/support.
If you have feedback for us, our email address is feedback@dailytechnewsshow.com. Talk to us. We'll talk back. We're also live Monday through Friday at 4:30 p.m. Eastern, 2030 UTC. And you can find out more at dailytechnewsshow.com/live.
See you Monday, folks.
This show is part of the Frog Pants Network. Get more at frogpants.com.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.
Woo.
But well drawn, Len.
Thanks.
Yeah, that was good.
It's a tough one, man.
Very, very good.
Real tough.
Yeah. Got to take a deep breath. It's going to be a tough one to title too.
Yeah.
You know what? Actually, We Stand with New Zealand is a pretty good one.
Yeah.
I like it.
Done.
To the point.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Well, in small victories, I realized halfway through the show that my camera looked so horrible because I had HD turned off.
Oh, well, well, I'm glad you got that.
I hope that brightened everybody's spirits a little bit. Yeah.
Also,
Doesn't look as good as Patrick's cool lens.
No, Patrick, if you just do the audio podcast, it's worth popping over to our YouTube channel or just finding the YouTube embed at Daily Tech News.
It's like I feel like I'm looking at like a professional portrait of him every time I switch
I
to
know.
his camera.
And part of it is just the bokeh. Like whenever you do bokeh, that you get that cool effect, but it does it really well. Like it's good execution.
It's like what, an 8-9 leaf aperture on it.
Like
so
leaf, I think.
yeah, so it's circular and not like that weird octagon or hexagon shape that you get with some of the lower cost.
It was. Yeah, I was laughing, Sarah, because because I got an Elgato Cam Link because there's some good HDMI video adapters, but they were costing about $300, and then Elgato came out with the Cam Link, which I think sold out. I think they're about 2 weeks behind in orders at Best Buy right now, but it's for, I want to say $125. It's pretty good. I had picked up a bunch of the PCI Express boards, which are what I'm putting into the machine to switch. But I laughed because I plugged it in and I fired up the lens. I got it set up and I looked over and I'm like, wow, Instagram really is about the camera sometimes, isn't it? I've never felt so Instagrammy. Quick, I need my whisk and some eggs from the chickens.
I mean, it makes because it just looks so.
Everybody's got to look like that now.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
I just well,
it's but they don't, and that's one of my big criticisms with some of the stuff that some people use it for, because it's not always the most appropriate lens or look to use. And I've seen this with a lot of gadget reviews, where they use really nice prime lens. The problem is when they focus in on the object, because you have such a shallow depth of field, you get the bezel in focus, and like a smartphone, you get the bezel in focus, but the rest of it's a blur, so you can't get a good idea of what you're looking at.
I didn't have the other lens in I was using this a lot at CES because the light's always so atrocious at CES. And it was funny, trying to take pictures of things at arm's length and not being able to get the focal length right. Or like you said, I remember I was taking a picture of a laptop and the keys in the front were in focus, but then the keys in the back were blurred and the screen was all broken out. And I was like, that's just, and then I saw part of fixing it is getting 5 feet away from it. But yeah, it's not, it's overused, I think, in some areas.
Well, I mean, there's a reason why ENG news, electronic news gathering crews, like the guys that go around in vans and stuff with the cameras, tend to use a very a wide angle, but a very deep a deep focus lens, because you don't know where the action is and you want to make sure it's in focus. So you're always kind of swinging around.
What's the model number again of that Sony? In case people were tuning out.
Sony A6000. And by the way, you boys and girls in LA, let me tell you, Craigslist is a tremendous resource. It's actually there's a bunch of stuff that I would have.
The A6000, right?
A6000. It's a 4-year-old design, but it's still a pretty badass camera. It's 1080p, not 4K. Uses Sony E-mount lenses. They're it's
you have to get not have to, but you want to get a good lens with it too. That's
it comes with a 16 to 50 millimeter. The kit lens is 16 to 50, 16 to 55. But take a look at Craigslist, because it was amazing. It is amazing to me how much gear. I mean, obviously, because it's LA, it's the center of the production universe.
But folks are always rolling through gear.
Productions are always going out of business.
A friend of mine was sort of dismantling a studio a couple of years ago and had a bunch of high-end stuff, real nice stuff for sale, and kind of let me do a pass first at a friend discount. And he was like, I mean, you should for 5 years and
upload pictures
steps after
a much lower resolution is the
video. We can hear Roger, the shooter's Facebook and video, which very well may be. We can't say. We haven't confirmed that. That would mean it took Facebook.
Newshow.com/live.
See you Monday, folks. There's your highlight version of DTNS.
Yep. Hope you liked it. That was pretty much it. But anyway, he had listed everything on Craigslist and was like, "Sarah, if you want stuff, you should get it because like it'll all be gone by the end of the day." And I was like, "Well, that's probably an exaggeration," and it was.
It was all gone by the end of the day.
it was all the good stuff was gone within 24 hours. You know, it was like just list it. People come by. He had a little, his Venmo name up on the wall with like a little spotlight on it, and just like Venmo me and take it.
That's so smart.
Yeah.
But yeah, the A6000, it's like a 24. It came out in 2014, 24 megapixel sensor, pretty good low light, and the new cameras are just a lot more expensive and kind of overkill. Trick with using it in for video for extended period of times is to open up the back, the monitor on the back, to pull it away from the body, open up the flash, and leave the battery door open
so it doesn't overheat.
Yeah, I may actually mod mine with a thermal pad, but I'm not quite.
Yeah, I mean the issue with that is like they designed them as like photo cameras, but they need to be designed as video cameras and lay out the components.
Yeah, I mean it's 50% that and 50%. There's a pretty hefty tax in the EU for video cameras.
Oh
so
yeah, no,
29-minute, 50-second cap on the. So you mean they kind of engineer it to do 29?
No, I totally know that. They one of the big things when the GH5 or 4 came out, the Panasonic was they limited the video capture on those cameras to like 15-20 minutes. Yeah. Like not enough to be considered a video camera, so they could get past that tax. It's really odd, but what you gonna do?
Yeah, one of these days I'm gonna have to upgrade that Panasonic I used to shoot the Tech Republic videos.
I gotta say, I really like the A6000s.
That's me going, maybe I'm gonna buy an A6000. Because that Panasonic that I got, it's fine. It's
fine.
6-7 years old at this point. Yeah. You can see it in action on we just posted a top 5 data recovery tips on Tech Republic.
Here's a Sony A6000 with a kit lens for $320 in Los Angeles. A6000 body only $300.
I just got to meet someone in a back alley with cash, and you'll be fine.
I'm always skeptical about buying the camera. I'll buy the lenses because generally they don't wear out. But those cameras, I'm always a little.
I don't know about in LA, but there are a lot of A6000s floating around the Bay Area that have been barely used.
Well, and it's like the video cards, right? You really don't know at what point they've been used up.
and yeah,
from the outside and know.
Well, also, how do you wear out a mirrorless camera, Roger?
With the earlier ones, people would just run them on video all the time, and you essentially just over time you'll get thermal breakdown.
Yeah, I had a Canon that happened to because I just left it on all the time, not on purpose.
It's partly is they weren't designed for that, so when they engineered it, they didn't think about it. But like. The big money savers is the lens because the glass is the stuff that will set you back a car down payment.
But it's still like $600 if you want to buy one from B&H, like the A6000 in particular. That's half the price if you find one.
Yeah, I mean, I had to buy the one I bought for CES. I had to buy off of Amazon to get it in time because because it's funny because there were a bunch of ridiculous deals around Black Friday, but I didn't think I was going to need it. And then the last 2 I got off of Craigslist, one up in Elk Grove, the other one drove up to Santa Rosa to meet a guy at a freaking Starbucks.
That's the part that gets
11 o'clock on a Sunday night.
I know intellectually it's fine, but yeah.
Once you've carried $8,000 into a trailer park to buy an Airstream, everything else just kind of pales.
It depends. Did you hold it in a duffel bag or a briefcase?
The funny part was picking up the cash because one of the friends of the guy selling the Airstream came along for the ride to the bank cuz board, I think, and he was heavily worked over in handmade tats, and I thought they were going to call the cops on me. at the Wells Fargo.
Why? Like
They just it was just they were just a little twitchy. Took them kind of it was very peculiar. The last time I had an interaction with like that with a bank teller was I had a conversation with a bank teller in New Jersey because I kept showing up in my 1970 beat to snot FJ40 with a paper bag, and I would clench the paper bag in my teeth out of fear that it would blow out of the truck. But the guy who ran the pizzeria I worked at, nobody, I was the only person who would go up into his profoundly filthy apartment upstairs and would wake him up on payday. And then he would go to the safe, throw a stack of cash into a paper bag, give me a deposit slip, and then I would go to the bank, make the deposit so we could all have our paychecks. And so I kept showing up at the bank with like $8,000 in a paper bag. And, one of the tellers, I was actually inside instead of in the drive-thru one day, and one of the tellers said something. I'm like, it's the deposit money for the pizzeria. I assure you, I have been sober for the last 3 years, and I'm not going to start dealing meth down here or whatever drug of choice.
They don't know that.
Yeah, well, they all kind of, and then the other woman was like, "Oh, that's Patty McGall's son."
Oh, yeah, okay.
And then everyone's like, "Oh, you're related to the teacher and the blonde and this."
He's okay. Bring untold sums of money and whatever
container you wish, sir.
I think it may have been suggested that at one point some what they now realize was flour came out of the bag, but it wasn't. They didn't know what it was.
Right, of course. I know I've told the story before at some point, but that reminds me of when my dad got busted by narcotics cops coming across the border from Brazil because he was packed in vitamin C. He was bringing back for his job. He was a food scientist. They had vitamin C. Vitamin C was expensive. They were allowing him to take it back for work on a project that was legitimately part of the project. He was working for the company in Brazil. And what the cops, what the border people saw in his suitcase were nice plastic bags full of vitamin C powder.
It's crazy.
Which, I mean, he's like, he's like, it was bad enough to get pulled off over and have to, have them do the knife slit and, taste it and go, oh yeah, no, that actually is sorbic acid. But then they made him fill out the custom slip for vitamin C because there's tariffs on it. And he didn't realize that. Like, I wasn't trying to get away with anything. So yeah, it's one of my dad's best stories. Vitamin C smuggler.
That's pretty awesome.
How dare you try to rid your country of scurvy?
Well, on that note, folks, we're going to wrap up the video. Thanks for watching. Audio folks, stick around. There is, in fact, more to come.
More.